watching the Forefront Church video podcast. And wherever you're at viewing online, we just want to say thank you and welcome. And one of the ways that we can help connect with you is we want to hear from you and where you're at and how we can help. And so head over to forefrontchurch.info after the message and click the Connect tab. It's a great way for us to help you along your spiritual journey as you connect with God and learn about Jesus. And so sit back, relax. We hope that you're challenged and encouraged from today's message. How we doing? I like it. You're lively. 8:30 a.m. I was like, 8:30, and they're all like, we're still waking up. You guys are pumped. I like it. Give it up for everybody that's tuning in online. Welcome them. We're glad you're with us. Every time I do that, I end up having somebody after church, they're like, so they're all like just their one area. We have one like up there in the lights and one over there. And then there's like the drummer cam, which is awesome because when you're online, you get up close and personal with the drummer. And you're like, I think I could pick out every little like freckle. And so it's really cool. I'm glad. Technology's awesome. Glad for you guys tuning in. I'm excited for today. And also, I lament a little bit about this particular message because we've been walking through the fruit of the Spirit that looks like, well, what happens when we go from a life that's living in desolation, a life that's broken, a life that's hurting, and we get over whatever hurdle it is for you or I. Maybe it's just the idea of even following Jesus. For some people, they go, man, I've been wounded and hurt by church or by Christians, and so I have all this stuff built up. How do we get over from desolation, get over this stuff, and move to the other side where God brings life and life abundantly? Now, don't hear me say that when you follow Jesus that everything's perfect. We say this all the time here at Forefront Church, that just because you follow Jesus doesn't mean that life moves in perfection. Actually, to the contrary, the Bible continually talks about the fact that when we begin to follow Jesus, you might actually face some pretty difficult hurdles. You might face what we'll talk about today, some sandpaper people that rub you the wrong way, things that are difficult, but there is hope and there is joy and there is purpose when we get over from that life of desolation to a life that is fruitful. Now, there will be moments where it feels like you've hit desolation again, but I can promise you that you have hope in someone greater. In the passage that we're going to look at, we've been looking at this all throughout the series, starting in Easter till now, is over in Galatians chapter 5. And so if you have a Bible, why don't you turn over there? Galatians chapter 5. If you don't have a Bible, we give them away for free. We say this every single week. There is no catch. You could stop by the Get Connected table, grab yourself a brand new Bible. We want every single person to have access to a Bible. And so if you don't have one, or you have one that you open up and you're like, I can't understand anything in here because there's a lot of these and arts and thous, and I don't talk like that, go, I get it. We don't talk like that either. And so there's a Bible in language that you can understand out at the Get Connected table, or you can stop by forefrontchurch.info, and if you just swipe a couple times till you get to the notes section, everything we talk about each week is right there. You can fill it out, email it back to yourself, and keep up with all the things that are going on. And so we're over in Galatians chapter 5, looking at what does it look like, what should be really exuding out of your life if you've moved from brokenness to a life that is fulfilled in Jesus. And over in Galatians chapter 5, this is what your life should. And I use that word kind of operatively because for many people, they say they follow Jesus, but it doesn't always look like that. This is what it should look like. But the fruit of the Spirit, so if you're following Jesus, you've made a commitment to Him, kind of like when we saw in that opening video of the baptism, Cheyenne's baptism. And what's cool is we have another person that messaged me this morning saying, hey, at 5 p.m. service, I want to get baptized too, which is awesome. I love that we see that continually happening here. This is the fruit of the Spirit when we follow Jesus is love, joy, peace, forbearance, which is a fancy way to say patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and what a lot of us struggle with, and we'll get to that in the final week, self-control. Now, when we look at these things, you might say, all right, Jason, okay, I get that, and I'm trying to move through some of that, but I want to move from here to here, but how do I do that? What should that look like in my life? How will other people see that? Well, Jesus talked a lot about that very precept of how do we move in kindness, and what does that look like, and how will people know? And over in the book of John chapter 13, Jesus shared it this way. He said, by this everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. And as it goes through that text there and looks at that word love, it is mirroring everything that we see in that Galatians passage. Love, joy, peace, that you will embody every single one of those. Now you may say, Jason, that is just not me. Like I got the love thing down, but that self-control thing, or you don't know, because I have a friend that's from Philly. And so, any Philly friends out there today? Yeah, a couple of you. And like, I talk to him all the time, and he's like, and he loves Jesus. He's there. He goes to church, all of that. But I'm like, hey man, like I saw your post the other day, and like you're kind of angry, bro. And he's like, Jason, I'm from Philly. That's just the way we do it. And he goes into the whole thing and all this stuff. And so we're on the phone talking. I'm like, but you follow Jesus. He's like, but that's part of my personality. I go, nah. Actually, the moment that you said you followed Jesus, every bit of these things, you said that you are going to adopt and claim in your life. He's like, I don't know why I always talk to you on the phone, man. I don't like this right now. And I was like, I get it and I understand it because we help hold each other accountable. We help walk through this. It was like, I love you, but we have to be people that this is what is seen, and we can't make excuses just simply because of the place that we grew up, or the circumstances that we may have found ourselves in with adults and in relationships and friends, all these things that kind of formed us and go, well, I have a hurt because of, and fill in the blank. And so I might have some of those, but not all of them. And I've been reading this book by a great author. His name is Bob Goff. He is might be the happiest man on the planet. And he wrote a book that was wildly popular called Love Does. And I picked up, and I don't normally recommend books that I haven't finished yet. But this book, and I'm almost done, and so I recommend it, and hopefully there doesn't take a hard right turn, and he's like, worship Satan in the end of it. But because that would be a real bummer. If you read through the whole thing, you're like, oh, this is so good, and he's like, join the Church of Satan. I'll be like, whoa! And so I don't expect that just turn, and so I recommend it up until, I don't know, chapter 10. But I've been reading this book, and it has been so cool to watch, and it completely started really kind of looking the same way as we're looking at this kindness piece and how we exude and what this looks like in your life and mine. And actually the title of it is called Everybody Always, and the subtitle is Becoming Loving in a World Full of Setbacks and Difficult People. Which I'm sure, as soon as I say difficult people, nobody in this room is like, I'm a difficult person. You've thought about somebody else. And so, but the weird part is somebody in this room may have thought about you. And so, how do we do this? And whether you're listening online or you're here this morning, how do we embrace this and really echo this in our lives? And I love the way that Bob puts it. He says, Jesus talked to his friends a lot about how we should identify ourselves. He said it wouldn't be what we said we believed, or all the good we hope to do someday. And I kind of pause there. This would be like if you go, man, I love Jesus, and go, well, how do you love Jesus? Well, I go to church. Cool. Well, how do you love Jesus? We go to small group. Well, what do you do with your small group? Well, we talk about love. We talk about kindness. We talk about grace. Well, what are you doing to show that? You go, well, what? Well, I study it. I read up on it. I pray on it and all that. Well, what are you actually doing? Because it's not what you say you believe. It's what you actually practice. Or as we would say here, and we say this a lot, that your life needs to practice what you preach. Because every single one of us, that when you woke up this morning, your life's a sermon. I'm not the only one that preaches. And you're like, well, wait a second, I don't get on stage. You do. Because every single day of your life, you stand on the stage of life in front of your family, in front of your spouse, in front of your kids, in front of your coworkers, your neighbors, every single person you encounter. You are preaching a sermon. And so my kind of question to myself and to you is, what sermon are you really preaching? He continues on. He says, all the good we hope to do, saying, nope. He said we would identify ourselves simply by how we loved people. It's tempting to think There is more to it. And the church at large in America has done a lot of stuff to kind of say, like, how do you love Jesus? Oh, well, and for decades, for the last probably 40, 50 decades, that have gone on, that people say, oh, if you love Jesus, you're going to get rid of all of your bad records. If you love Jesus, you're not going to go to a radar movie. If you love Jesus, you will not find yourself in any of those establishments that serve any type of the devil's juice. Like that's growing up when I was younger, they would say, like, you would not go to these places and do these things. That's how you show your love to others. And my question kind of growing up, not really sure about God, but then listening to other people talk about this is like, well, if you say that you love Jesus and people are supposed to see how you love Jesus, that all the ways you're describing that you would never be around anyone to ever show them that you love Jesus because you've retreated back to this little bubble where you just sit in your house and sing Kumbaya and you're never out actually loving and being kind. He says, but there's more to it than that. We try to make it more to it, but there's not. Love isn't something we fall into when we care for other people. Love is someone we what? Become. Love is something we become, and we show this kindness and love when we interact with a hurting and desperate world. The very same world that we've existed in, that we've found brokenness and hurt in times where we felt like we are just at the end of our rope. I remember when I took on this role back almost 10 years ago, I actually did what Brandon, our creative arts pastor, does, and occasionally would even be on stage and sing, but did video and all the stuff behind the scenes. And then a little while after being in this job, they approached me like, hey, would you like to be on stage and preach? I was like, nah. And then we prayed for it for a while. My wife's like, I think God's telling us that you need to preach. And I was like, I think you need to pray more. You need to ask God again. And then 10 years later, you're stuck with me. And I was going through it, and I remember one of my mentors said, hey, you're going to come across these people that it'll be difficult to be kind to them. You may have these people in your life. They're sandpaper people, the people that rub you the wrong way. Now, I would say that if you're sitting next to that person, please do not nudge them. That you may be thinking about that now, but you have people in your life, and sometimes it's the people that we love the most that rub kind of the hardest against those things. And my mentor at the time said, hey, listen, as you take a role like this, if you're going to share love and grace and hope for people, there's going to be people who rub you the wrong way. And you have to move in kindness. I want to give you some examples. In the first 4 months when I took this role, I sat in a Panera Cafe, and some guy that went to the church at the time, I was trying to help love on him and his fiancée, and he got up and just started cursing at me in the middle of the cafe at Panera. And I was like, just looking around, and like he stormed off. And I just looked at everybody and I was like, so that's awkward. And it was a scene. I started getting emails. People made up fake email addresses that was like forefrontstinks@whatever.com. And I was getting these emails all to me. And I was like, man, that's really weird. And I emailed my mentor. I was like, hey, I'm getting all this stuff. And this guy, whatever, he's like, it's only beginning. And seriously, there was a guy, I give this person credit. They had gone to the church for a long time. We would hold them accountable, and they left because they were very upset that we were trying to love them. And they were like, I don't like the way you're holding me accountable. I was like, well, that's what the Bible says. And so they left. Well, little did I know, somebody emailed me, they're like, hey, there's a blog about you. I was like, that's cool. They're like, no, it's a blog about you. Because if you hear somebody say there's like a blog about you, you're like, that'd be pretty neat. And they're like, no, it's not that flattering. And so I was like, well, how do you know it's about me? And they're like, well, every Sunday when you preach, usually on like late Monday or Tuesday, there's blog posts. And now the person's named Pastor Pete in the blog. And I was like, that's clever, I guess. But it goes through your entire sermon and says all the things that you're dumb about. And I was like, I give that person real credit. That's a real, when you talk about haters gonna hate, that's a new level. And I emailed my mentors, all this stuff's happening. And I was like, what should I do? He's like, you have a choice. The things that you preach on stage, are you gonna practice them in private? And so what I started doing, I found the people's emails that I knew of and addresses in the database, and I started writing thank you cards to all the people that were being hurtful, and I sent them gift cards. And I don't say that to be like, oh, look at Jason. I say that because there has to be a standard by which we live if we say we follow Jesus. And if people are going to be hurtful, you have a choice. Are you going to move in the kindness that you've said you follow when you say you follow Jesus? Or are you going to do your own thing because it just feels like that is what you want to do, that you're going to choose your own way instead of the way of Jesus. You see, and I want to remind you, it's something that's become very clear to me after doing ministry now for over 20 years, is that you and you're a rough draft in a world of rough drafts. So be kind. You see, we meet people all the time that are going through difficult things, and we think we're the only one that's going through them, and we usually judge people by their actions, and then we judge ourselves by our motives. And so we walk through things and we go, well, I'm having a bad day, so people should understand. And the moment that someone else is hurtful or unkind, we go, well, wait a second. Look at what they did. They're living in darkness, and I'm over here. I've gotten over myself, and I love Jesus. Hallelujah. And everything, and we're fine. And then we look over the fence. We go, I can't believe you. And what do? Instead of showing kindness, we show judgment. We look at them, we go, I can't believe, and then we don't step out of our comfort zone and move in a way that we should to truly be kind. And Jesus talked about this, and this is actually a passage that many people have quoted, done inspirational posters of. It'll be here on the screen. It's over in Matthew. It says, you have heard it said, an eye for an eye or a tooth for a tooth. But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, and you've heard this phrasing, turn the other cheek. If someone slaps you on the right cheek, turn the other cheek also. Continues on. And if any of you wants to sue, if anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, hand over your coat as well. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. You've heard people say, I want to go the extra mile. This would be one of those things like an inspirational poster. It has it's those posters, it's black, but then it has in the center, it has a scene of a dirt road going way far off. And it would say, if you want to reach your goal, go the extra mile. And then in big letters, inspiration. And people frame these things and put this out. And we read a passage like this, we go, ooh, that's good. I'm going to get that verse tattooed on my ankle and let everybody know I'm going the extra mile so when I run, I can Instagram it. Not that anybody would ever do that. Look on Pinterest. I bet you'll find this verse everywhere. Give to the one who asks, and do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you. Now I want to pause, because while we see this and we go, ooh, that's good, I'm going to put that on. I'm going to find a little meme of that with a scenic background. I'm going to post that, and everybody's going to be like, oh, I want to give some context for why this is far from an inspirational movement and actually a time for us to really consider what it means to move in kindness. You see, during this time, the Roman Empire was in control of every single thing that it touched. And the Roman soldiers that would travel throughout these towns and go to these places, they would stop in different places, and they would just do whatever they wanted. They would take control of whatever was taking place. And so, for instance, they would move, and so the people that Jesus is talking to, they had experienced this very thing, where Roman soldiers would be traveling, and they would come in, and they would just go into your house, and they would set up shop and stay for a while. Sometimes kick your entire family out, but more than likely they would keep all of the females there at the house. Sometimes for the night, sometimes for a few nights, while the rest of the family was outside, living wherever they could find, having their way with your household and your family. And then they would eventually leave, but not before adding insult to injury. You see, they would get whoever was around, usually some of the younger sons or even the head of the household, the husbands, and they would grab them and say, hey, listen, we're getting ready to leave town, and I want to remind you that we're the ones in control. And so I'm going to hand you my 50, 60, 70 pounds of gear, and I want you to carry it outside of town a mile, just to let you know who's in control. Let's revisit this. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2. It has a completely different context when we see what it actually means to live out kindness. You see, it's not as inspirational as it is pushing us outside of the regular place that we find ourselves. And it pushes us to be kind even when it hurts, even when we've been wounded, Even when the people around us who have hurt us deeply have called on us to do one more thing, go one extra mile, go one extra piece, and we go, you know what? I will do you one better because I follow Jesus and I'm going to be kind to you because I want you to also see that love too. And if you don't get anything else, my prayer is that you would get this. That radical kindness means going outside the lines and abolishing your comfort zone. I meet plenty of people doing this job. It's fantastic. It's so neat to hear the places that people have been and why they've heard about the church and why they've come and kind of made this their home. And as I talk to them, I'm like, all right, what is God doing in your life? What's happening? And they'll share some of the coolest stories. But then I'll ask them, all right, where is God pushing you to? They're like, what do you mean? Well, where is God moving you to? Because you're not just going to sit where you've always been. God wants to do something more in your life than just sit and be a spectator. They go, well, I don't know about that. I'm uncomfortable. And this is where, like my friend in Philly, we begin to have a conversation. I'm pretty to the point. I don't kind of, mince words in a loving way. But I'd be like, hey, God calls you to be more, to experience more, to serve more. So where are you going to serve? And I go, well, I'm comfortable in the parking lot, but don't ask, and maybe even at the greeter space, but don't put me at the Get Connected table because that'd be crazy. They're like, that's outside my comfort zone. I'm like, cool. And this would be a very easy place to be like, sure, I'm sure Jesus was uncomfortable when he went to the cross and died for your sins, but I'm sure you can do whatever. And that would be easy for somebody. And I've heard people, and I would never use that, but I've heard people try to use that kind of thing to shame people and force them. I go, and I would never do that. But in conversation, I go, man, you were built for more. Why? When you decide to follow Jesus, it abolished your comfort zone. There are people right now across all 4 of our services that will sit with kids on carpets, and they'll sit with a group of 5, 6, 7, 6-year-old boys, and they're trying to teach them about Jesus, and all they want to talk about is Pokemon. And there's adults who are like, it's driving me crazy, whatever. You know that the biggest thing that an adult could do is show them what a life in Jesus looks like as they sit on a carpet and tell them about Jesus and listen to Pokemon. Because one of the number one things that are happening throughout our society, and we've seen it in the church at large in the United States, women outnumber men 15-1, which are great odds if you're a single guy. But when it comes to the local church and when it comes to our society, one of the biggest things that's happened, and this is even in secular studies that have been done, they say that when it comes to a problem of crime, when it comes to a problem of behavior, when it comes to a problem of societal drug use and the problems and the depression and the anxiety and all these things that happen, you say one of the number one things that could change that and shift it back is if men were engaged with a generation before them and help point them to what is true about them and their worth. And then within the local church context, that men would step up. And because we have plenty, women all the time serving, then guys are like, I don't know about that. Be like, do you have a build stuff ministry? I'm like, oh, yeah, you can build up kids. Be like Legos? I'm like, no, you can go back there and help them. And it means getting out of your comfort zone. I've watched some of the toughest, most I have a comfort zone guys get back there and get in our student ministry and serve as small group leaders. And a year, 2, 3 years in, they go, man, I don't know why I didn't do this sooner. I know, because it's why all of us don't do it sooner, because we have a tendency to sit in our comfort zone. Here's one of the things that I've learned the hard way, and God's changed my heart in this. His kindness is built by going places you don't want to go, for people you don't want to see, and doing things you don't want to do until it becomes something you just can't live without. You know, one of the places I used to hate the most to go? Hospitals. Absolutely terrified of it. When I was younger, my mom was pregnant with my brother. I was 2. She went to the hospital. My dad had been out on multiple deployments, and so I didn't really know my dad all that well at 2 years old, which many people in our community face as we being in a military area. And so when my mom left, I was like, she left me with this stranger. Ugh. And when we went to the hospital, I was so mad at my mom. And you may say, it's the most vivid memory I have from the earliest on. And from that point on, I just was creeped out by hospitals. And so what happens when you're a pastor? Well, people get sick, people have surgeries, people have stuff. And they're like, hey, can you come by the hospital? And early on, like my first year in ministry, fresh, green, right out of Bible college, I was like, and I was terrified. You know one of the things I love the most now? When someone calls me up and goes, hey man, so-and-so's having surgery, can you come and pray with us? Hey, can you come up to the hospital? This is going on. Because the literal and figurative wounds that go on in people's lives, I'm so glad that God got me out of my comfort zone. Even this past week, I got to be with a friend and be with their family. I didn't really say much. They had a passing in the family, and we were just around and being there and just in the moment. And just watching the healing that begins to take place. Not because anything that I did, just being around other people and getting out of your comfort zone. It'll change you. And there's a few things that can foster that. 3 of them very quickly. That the first thing is kindness is fostered by being present. We looked at that in that John 13 passage, that how will they know that you love him and you're his disciple, that you've been baptized, that you're following out, is that you would love and be kind and show that to others. The only way you can do that is by being present, being around. I took my daughter the other day to her orthodontic appointment, and I looked around at the room, and everyone, and I looked at her, I was like, hey, what's going on? They're like, they're all on their phones. Went to the movies the other day. And everybody that's sitting in the movie theater, no one's talking. Even families that came together, they're all on their devices, just doing their thing. I watched the other day as I was going into the store, and it was a store, it wasn't like the open, automatic doors. You actually have to, I know, the struggle, first world problem, so real. You actually have to open the door. And I watched a person who walked up to the door texting. Another person opened it for them, very kind. And they were texting, looked up, looked back down, and walked right through the door. Nothing, no words, whatever. And I'm watching this happen. As I'm walking up to the store, I'm like, well, it just happened right there. You cannot be present if you are constantly consumed, whether it's with work, whether it's with the anxiety of things that are going on in your life, and you're so consumed with that mentally. Sometimes, and I love technology, it's awesome. We use it in so many ways. But technology can, if not used properly, can consume you. Being present. If you want to be kind and be loving, you have to be in the moment. And you can look for beautiful opportunities. The second piece of that, being able to build kindness and foster that, is being purposeful. Looking for ways that you can honor other people. On our small group page, I gave a challenge. I said it's the kindness challenge. The fact that we even have to do a kindness challenge is bonkers. Because why? Because people have a difficulty being kind. It's not something that we're prone to do. We're in a culture in which people just look for the negative in so many ways. And so we did the kindness challenge, and another person, it was funny because in our small group, we do food in our small group, and other small groups do. And I was like, and get up at the very beginning of the small group, I'm like, all right, so we got this in the kitchen. I didn't even end it. And like one of the people in the small group, they like jumped up and like ran. They almost took me out. Like I was like, man, I need pads and a helmet when I come to small group and be ready like a football player. They ran through it. So then on the small group page, they were like, yeah, somebody needed some food and whatever, like something was going on, and I shared it with them. And then like the funny part was, can you believe it? Because a small group. But it was this moment for them to be kind in a way, just a very simple way. Somebody needed some food. I gave them some food. Here's what happened. And there are moments where you can be purposeful in your life, whether it's with your family, whether it's with your neighbor. My next door neighbor that just moved in not too long ago, he moved in and he and his wife, and they're doing their thing. They're getting a new fence, and I was kind of frustrated because their fence didn't go up fast enough. And I'm like, bro, it's been a while. Put that fence up. Like it was just stacked stuff, and it was overgrown and all this. And so I was frustrated. And went over there, he came out one day and he was smiling, and there was a company. I didn't know there was a company that was going to do it. I just saw all the pieces. I'm like, bro, you got the pieces there, put it up. And he came out and he started talking about this stuff, and he started talking about, the weather and this happened in the company, whatever, and he was stressed about it. I had no idea. But I was frustrated, and when I saw him outside, there was a little part of me that's like, I ain't even going to talk to him. Put up your fence, and then we can talk. Like I didn't say it out loud, but I thought it, okay? And I'm just being honest. This is my thought process. And so I was like, I saw him coming out, and he did the neighborly wave, and I did the neighborly wave. I'm like, put a fence. And then, like, we kind of meet in the middle. You know how, like, people do, you have to meet in the front yard because everybody got, like, a 20-foot fence now, privacy's sake. And so we come out, and we meet, and we do the thing. We start talking, start sharing his frustration. And I was like, interior-wise, I'm like, man, I'm such a jerk. Should I share with him that I was thinking these things? I was like, no, I'm gonna be purposeful. I'm gonna sit here and do this. But I knew, I was like, this sermon's coming. So we saw him a couple days later. I was like, hey, man, I need to tell you. And I told him, I was like, man, I was frustrated. And then you told me, I said, I just want to say I'm sorry. He said, you were frustrated too? And I was like, yeah, I was frustrated, but that wasn't right. I shouldn't have done that. And he said to me, he's like, that's really kind of you to do that. You didn't even ever have to tell me. Like, I never would have known. I was like, yeah, but I should. It's like, that's what people do. We let people know. And I think the reason that we have a hard time being purposeful is because of the next piece, because kindness is fostered by being patient. And we talked about this last week, and I cannot tell you the number of emails that I got. They're like, Jason, you preached on patience, and so I prayed about having more patience, and I'm mad that I prayed about having more patience. Because when you pray and ask God for patience, He doesn't give you patience. He gives you opportunities to practice patience. And there were some people that were like, I don't know if I want to pray that prayer again. It's a tough week. I'm like, I feel you, man. And I think the hardest piece that we have in this is about being patient with other people, even when we don't want to do something. And if you think that Jesus hasn't experienced this, there were lots of ways. I want to share you a little bit, maybe a little lighter way. You see, he was invited to a wedding. It was over in John chapter 2 of the New Testament. And he's invited to a wedding. It's a party. They're hanging out. They're doing their thing. And his mom comes up to him and says, hey, they're out of wine. You need to do something. And Jesus is a little older at this point. He's getting ready to start his ministry. And he actually voices a little bit of frustration. But he does it in a way that I would have never done. But I see, he says, and it would have been contextually okay in that society. He looks and says, woman, what does this have to do with me? Now, I can tell you, in that context, it would have been fine. If I ever said to my mom, if my mom came up to me and said, Jason, I need you to do X, Y, and Z. And I looked at my mother, even grown, right now, and said, well, woman, I would not be able to finish the rest of my sentence. I'd be waking up like a week later, like, whew, what happened? She'd be like, call me woman again. See what's up. And this is in the context, Jesus is not being disrespectful. But he says, woman, what does this have to do with me? I'm not ready to start. Basically, I'm not ready to start this ministry. And I love his mom's response. His mom turns to the people that have said there's no more wine, disregards everything Jesus said. She's like, you just do whatever he tells you to do. And basically, and it doesn't note that she says anything, but I just got to imagine that she just looks over at Jesus like, and the mom look of like, you going to do what I just said. Gives him the look. And Jesus, he's like, he goes with the people. And he goes and he turns the water into wine. Now, there's a lot of people that would say that during the story, it wouldn't have been real wine. It would have been grape juice. I'm here to let you know that that's not true. It's not Welch's grape juice. Because what happens during during a ceremony and festivities is they would give out the best wine first, and people would be like feeling a little good, all right, dancing a little more than they should, and then they would start wheeling out the worst wine later, so people wouldn't know the difference. So Jesus does this, says, bring it to the person in charge, bring it to the person in charge, and say, all right, well, wait a second. He goes to the groom of the wedding and said, listen, you just brought out the best wine. We've been here for a long time. You brought out the best wine possible. See, Jesus performs his first miracle because his mom, he wasn't ready to do it. He was a little irritated, frustrated at the moment, but he did it. Even when he was asked to do something that he didn't feel ready to do. Now, that's a mild case, but more often than not, we encounter people that ask us to do things and move in ways and love in ways that we don't necessarily want to do. Maybe it is a spouse. Maybe it is in a relationship, a friendship, a child, a boss, a coworker, a neighbor. And something happens and we are not ready to do that because we go, I can't believe, and it might even get pretty elevated and go, I know what they've done. I know where they've been. I know what they've been a part of. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to be loving. I am not going to be kind. And what we do is we keep, in every moment that God is calling us to be kind, and we elevate our opinion, and we keep raising it higher and higher and higher above what God's precept is about kindness. And I love the way that Bob puts it later on. He shares this. Sadly, whenever you and I make our opinions more important than difficult people that God made, we turn the wine back into water. You see, we undo the very thing that we've claimed, that God is doing the miraculous in my life and in others. And what we say is, I want to follow Jesus, but I'm going to do it my way. And there are going to be moments where even though God calls me to be kind, I am not going to be kind because my opinion is greater than what God's called me to. And God has called you and I to an irrational love and kindness that doesn't make sense to you and I, but it makes perfect sense to the Creator and does beautiful things that only He can do. Even when you've been wounded and hurt by others, even when it doesn't make sense. You see, radical kindness means going outside the lines and abolishing your comfort zone. And maybe I just need to remind you this morning that you're a rough draft and I'm a rough draft in a world full of people who are also rough drafts. So let's be kind because Jesus calls us to it. Would you pray with me? Thanks for tuning in to the Forefront Church video podcast. Our hope and prayer is that this has left you encouraged and challenged you in your faith. And you might have some questions and some ways that you want to figure this out, and we want to help with that. Head over to forefrontchurch.info, and there's a couple different ways that you can connect. Click the Connect tab and let us know how we can be praying for you or a staff member can be contacting you this week. Maybe you have just been encouraged by this and want to support the ministry here at Forefront Church. You can click the Giving tab as well as other tabs that are in there to help you along in your journey with God. And so we're thankful for you. Thanks for tuning in. And we cannot wait to see you again here online on the video podcast. We love you and we'll see you then.